Good evening, everyone. Will you please join us in a salute to the flag? And after that, we're going to ask you to stand for a moment of silence for William Lawrence Noto, who recently passed away. He was a member of our Board of Adjustment.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence for William Noto. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2018 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2017, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Here. Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here. Good night, Cece.
Mr. McGehee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting of February 6, 2018. We're going to start off with the oath of office for 3 of our officers. I'm sure most of you are here for that. Then we'll have a proclamation for Black History Month. We'll do a couple of appointments for boards and committees. We'll then have our first public comment session. If anyone would like to address the Township Committee, we'll ask you to come up and give us your name and your address. We'll have our monthly Board of Health meeting. Then we will deal with a number of ordinances. I believe we have 8 ordinances dealing with stop signs around town. Then we have an ordinance on introduction on, let me get to that, all these ordinances here. Senior Advisory Committee, we have a new ordinance that we'll be introducing. We also have a new ordinance introducing the idea of a police chaplain. So we're going to be establishing that. And then we have an ordinance dealing with vacant residential properties. We have 4 discussion items: solar ordinance, charging South Orange seniors the Maplewood resident fee for recreation programs. Number 3, the pool fees for summer of 2018. And number 4, the special assessment and raised assessment for Maplewood Village Alliance regarding pavers. We have a number of resolutions, 12 on our consent agenda, dealing with maybe some of you want to stay. The first is the rate for off-duty Maplewood police officers. Maybe you want to hear that one. We're going to be purchasing fuel, road salt, auto parts, tires, submitting a recycling grant application, contract to plant trees. We'll be approving bills and claims. We'll do a resolution asking for our 8th retail consumption license. And then we'll appoint a commissioner to the Intergovernmental Insurance Fund, and we will approve the minutes open and closed of January 16th. We'll have our second public comment period. We'll have administrative reports and reports from elected officials, and then we will adjourn. So let me welcome you to our meeting of February 6th, and I'm going to ask our clerk Elizabeth Fritzen if she would begin administering the oaths of office to the various sergeants that we promoted this year.
First one will be Sergeant Lawson. I
Sean Lawson,
solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will
that I will
support the Constitution
support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear
that I will bear
true faith
true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to governments established
to the governments established
in this state
in this state
and the United States,
of the United States,
and under the authority
and under the authority
of the people,
of the people,
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office
of the office of
Sergeant,
Sergeant
Maplewood Police
in
Department,
the Maplewood Police Department
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Sergeant.
Got a smile.
Yeah, just
Come on.
Some remarks. Thank you all for coming out. First, I'd like to thank God because without Him, this wouldn't be possible. Thank my friends and family for showing up, showing support. Thank Town Committee. Greatly appreciate you guys. Chief of Police. Tim Duvall, thank you as well. Have a good night.
That's what we like, a short speech as a model for the other two coming up. No pressure though, you know. All right, we have another oath to administer.
Mayor, that will be Sergeant Wright. I
I, Alexander Jan Wright,
solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will
that I will
support the Constitution
support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear
and that I will bear
true faith
true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the governments established
to the governments established
in this state
in this state
and the United States,
and the United States,
and under the authority
and under the authority
of the people,
of the people,
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office of
of the office of
Sergeant
Sergeant
in the Maplewood Police Department,
in the Maplewood Police Department,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, Sergeant.
One picture, then I'll. Good evening, everyone. I'll be quick as well. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, family, friends, my parents, my coworkers, chief. I'm really still in shock that this happened. I thank the Township Committee for having faith in me. I've always worked very hard for the Township of Maplewood, and I'm going to continue to do that in whatever aspect I can. And I'm looking forward to taking on this new role as sergeant. Thank you.
Okay, our last oath.
Next one will be Sergeant Brian Edward Wegley. I
Brian Wade,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will
that I will
support the Constitution
support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and I will bear
and I will bear
true faith
true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the governments established
to the governments established
in this state
in this state
and the United States,
and the United States,
and under the authority
under the authority
of the people,
of the people,
that I will
that I will
faithfully,
faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office of
of the office of
Sergeant
Sergeant
in the Maplewood Police Department,
in the Maplewood Police Department,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, Sergeant.
I just want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the Township Committee, Chief DeVol, everybody from the police department. I wouldn't have this opportunity if it wasn't for some of the people in this room. So I especially want to thank my wife, Nicole, and the rest of my family that made it here today. Thank you guys very much.
So we have a lot more to do, but I don't think you want to be here for that. So where's the party? Woodland, okay. All right.
Keep the noise
Well,
down.
we'll take a break for a couple minutes to allow you to go assemble over there. Have fun.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Frank's giving out his card.
Of course he is. my notes. And I had to practice how to ask.
Okay, we're going to get started. Next on our agenda is a proclamation for Black History Month, and Deputy Mayor Frank McGehee will read that proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas February has been designated as the month to highlight contributions of African Americans, and whereas throughout our country's history, there have been millions of African Americans who worked, fought, and sacrificed to create a better America, and whereas African Americans for centuries have made significant contributions in the fields such as business, education, politics, athletics, science, nutrition, medicine, and the arts, and whereas African American leaders have played a significant role in altering the course of history through marching, testifying, teaching, and other social justice actions, and whereas among the roster of world-class achievers are those who have served as human rights pioneers such as Dr. Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, a former slave and abolitionist, educators Mary Bethune and Booker T. Washington, businesswoman Sarah Madam C.J. Walker, inspiring artists such as Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, and Paul Robeson, literary scholars Langston Hughes and James Baldwin, a hero in the field of law, Thurgood Marshall, the first African American honored on a U.S. postal stamp, Harriet Tubman, a leader of the Underground Railroad, and the first African American president, Barack Obama. And whereas it is important that we recognize and celebrate the achievements of these champions of justice and equality, now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Victor Luca and the Maplewood Township Committee do hereby proclaim the month of February 2018 as Black History Month.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have appointments to boards and committees, and Mr. McGehee, you have
Yes, I would like
someone for the Green Team.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call Martin separately up, please. Martin, if you could just take a second to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself to the community, and then I will go on and say some kind words about you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Martin Sarpele. I've been a resident of Maplewood for about 6 years. I'm an advocate and geek about solar energy and electric vehicles. So I found a home in the green team. So yeah, I'm excited to work with the green team on progressing Maplewood's transition towards electric vehicles, renewable energy, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement there. And I see we're already working towards greenifying, electrifying a lot of the transit and encouraging our residents to go green. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to it.
I would just like to publicly say that Martin and his wife, Kelly, have been pillars in the Maplewood community. They are true Maplewoodians. They've been here for a little over 6 years, as Martin has stated, but don't be confused by that tenure. It feels like they've been here forever. Martin has been very active, as well as Kelly. Kelly with obviously Soma Action, as well as with the Community Coalition on Race. And Martin's been very active on the green team. In fact, he single-handedly, I think, provided and coordinated all of our electric cars, including his own Tesla, which was awesome, by the way, must say. But it's Maplewoodians like that really make this engine go. And so I would be honored to have Martin be part of the green team. And so I look for a motion to approve Martin separately to be part of the green team.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Let's do it
Yes.
officially.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Congratulations. Thank you.
And then we also need a motion to appoint Township Committee Woman Nancy Adams as the liaison to the Maplewood Memorial Park Conservancy.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to nominate Nancy Adams as liaison to the Maplewood Memorial Park Conservancy.
I'll second that.
Please call the roll. I don't think they have any discussion. Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams? Yes. Yes. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I look forward to another meeting.
Pretty important cause.
Yes.
Next up, we have our public comment session. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee? Are you coming to talk to us about the pool? So you can come, about the fees? You can do that later. You want to do it now? Okay. There you go. Just, you're banking that we can remember.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can remember.
We can remember. Go ahead.
Roll.
I'm just sort of surmising. So thank you, Jennifer Coleman, 693 Prospect here, along with Ken Parsons. We're representing the Township Pool Advisory Committee. So wanted to give you some background before you go through the new membership fees that we're recommending. We wanted to just give you a little bit of background as to why we're proposing what we're proposing. So the Maplewood Pool, as you know, is one of the true gems of our town, offering our community members a place to come together during the summer months. This year alone, we served approximately 6,400 Maplewood residents at the pool, with revenue of approximately $795,000. I can be really loud.
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that number one more time? The revenue.
So our revenues were approximately $795,000.
Thank you.
With operating expenses of approximately $825,000, leaving us with a gap of about $40,000. The pool is intended to be run as a self-sustaining entity, as I believe you all know. In recent years, this has been a challenge, an ongoing challenge for the pool, which lacks a capital improvements fund to pay for the ongoing needed repairs and maintenance, just regular maintenance, coupled with decreasing pool membership revenues. Looming expensive repairs will soon be required over the next 1 to 5 years to simply maintain the current status of the pool. Some of examples are a new main pool filter, remarcasiting the dive pool tank, not to mention the dream of updating the women's and men's bathrooms. Unfortunately, these needs will only continue, and there's not enough money coming in from membership fees to both cover annual operating expenses as well as fund these very necessary capital improvements and repairs. So it's our job as volunteer members of the pool committee to suggest best practices and try to find ways to manage the pool budget within existing revenues. The pool derives its revenue solely from membership fees, group rates, and lessons, as well as party fees. There has not been an increase to membership fees in the last 5 years, just so you know, in an attempt to remain on par with neighboring towns and municipalities while being fiscally responsible to the needs of our pool. We respectfully suggest that this year the Maplewood Township Committee consider and approve the pool advisory's fee increases for the 2018 season. In the short term, the Pool Advisory Committee is recommending that summer memberships increase almost 5% for couples and between 9 to 10% for families. There would be no increase in fees for seniors. And we're recommending this because when you look at our population base for the pool membership, we've got about 63% of the membership population are within that family category. So the committee felt that since that's where we have the highest population, that's where most of the burden of the increase should be in order to try and corroborate usage and fee increases proportionally by demographic usage. We've also suggested that group swim lessons increase from $25 to $35, and that pool parties would be offered at $250 for weekdays, and go up to $500 on weekends. An increase from $300. It's a $200 increase on the parties, which last year were $300 across the board on both weekdays and weekends. And then preseason parties where we have large groups come in, such as the schools and the Girl Scouts, we would be charging a flat rate of $10 per child. And so that's sort of where we net out with the existing pool membership fee structures. In an attempt to try to create a new potential membership revenue stream for the pool, the pool committee is also recommending a limited number of pool memberships to out-of-town individuals and families. These membership rates are offered at a much higher rate, approximately 50% above our regular township rates, putting a premium on Maplewood residency. The total number of such memberships would be capped at a maximum of 325 for the season. We believe that these changes are modest in light of the overall needs of the pool and reflect best management practices. We, as a committee, are committed to making the pool an attractive and welcoming community asset while also keeping it safe, up to date, and as affordable as possible. Over the long term, our committee hopes to identify items for a capital plan with input, suggestions, and priorities as identified by the pool membership. We hope to present this summary report with recommendations for long-term capital improvements this fall after the 2018 season. And we welcome any questions from the Maplewood Township Committee and community members about the increases we're proposing. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for all that information. Do you have any idea whether or not the increases you're suggesting would make up that $40,000 gap? And if there's any left over to maybe begin the capital fund?
It's really just going to close that gap for us if we're able to stay at our current membership rates. We're really going to close that $40,000 gap, but we're not going to have funding for a capital improvements campaign if we continue with the current membership rates that we've got. So it doesn't close, it helps us close the gap. It doesn't help us get any closer to establishing a fund. But we have other ideas for that, separate and apart from the membership fees, because we don't believe that we're going to be able to accomplish that capital improvements through membership fees alone.
Okay, do you have any idea whether or not the increase will have a negative impact on the number of members?
There's no way to tell. I mean, historically, the membership has been decreasing since 2010. It's just been going downhill from that as far as we've been tracking it. I can tell you that for this year, when you look at this year, year on year to 2016, we remained flat. We didn't really see a significant drop, but we haven't seen significant increases either.
That goes to my next question, which is whether or not the committee has talked about any ideas for increasing membership separate and apart from the.
I mean, we do always kick around ideas. Unfortunately, it is a volunteer committee, as I'm sure you know, working on the park committee. And there's limited funds to really do any active kind of marketing. So it all has to be very grassroots, and that's where we're at. So, I don't think you can see a substantial or expect to see a substantial jump in the membership, given that there's not a huge marketing budget to put behind it to try to get the pool out there in front of a lot of people.
Maybe at the very least, social media.
Oh, we are very active. We've got the Facebook page. I mean, Missy does a terrific job with her staff working the social media aspect of it. It goes so far.
Yes. First and foremost, I appreciate your analysis and projections in terms of raising revenue to meet that gap, and also the incremental revenue stream which you talked about, which is the out-of-town fee. You mentioned percentages. I was wondering if you had actual cost, hard numbers in terms of price points for those numbers. So when you say up to 50% above the standard family fee, or across the board, is there a number you could articulate this time?
I don't know the numbers.
I have those numbers, so during our discussion later, I can get into the numbers.
Yeah, we've got a whole chart graphed out. I didn't really think that I needed to get into all of that nitty gritty. I know Missy's put together a chart with our recommendations that breaks out the current membership rates, and of course we're also recommending an early bird option as well. That would be a 5% discount up until April 1st. So I mean, but that's all spelled out in hopefully the documentation that Greg and Misty have put together for you guys to really sink your teeth into.
I appreciate it. We talked about this at one of our committee meetings earlier, obviously the pool as well as the capital that we need for this filter. And we're very cognizant of that as well. So thank you for your presentation.
All right, thank you for your time.
I had one more question, Ms. Coleman. So in response to Committeewoman Adams' question before about closing the gap versus raising revenue, I understand that the increase in fees is intended to close the gap. Obviously, another big change in addition to raising fees for the existing membership categories would be creating this out-of-town resident category. And, might that be, is that part of closing the gap, or would those membership fees potentially take us sort of above the gap?
We're not really counting on that to close the gap. That's just, we're looking at that as really incremental revenue if we're able to get it.
Right.
It's a big question mark. We're not sure if it's going to work or not, but we want to try as many things as we can to try to bring in more incremental revenue where and when we can.
Understood. So to the extent that we had success with getting the out-of-town residents to pay the premium membership price to join, we would still not have as many members as we did a decade ago. So there wouldn't be an overcrowding issue,
no.
But we could potentially be putting some money towards, above operating expenses. Correct. Into a rainy day fund.
Potentially, yes,
okay.
Exactly.
I look at that, if we can get this incremental up, you're looking at a higher cost per swimmer.
Exactly. And it does put a premium on being a Maplewood resident too. So.
Right.
Do you remember when we put the slide in?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember when we put the slide in?
Oh, vividly, yes.
Yeah, no, but how many years ago that was?
That was right when I joined the committee, so that was 2011.
Wow.
2010, it was either the summer of 2010 or 2011.
Okay, because
I think it was 2011.
So that's 7 years at the end of, so the bonding for that is an 11-year payback. So, another 4 years, that 130 that we're taking out, 130,000 that we're taking out for bonding is going to be free up in under 5 years.
If our filter makes it that long. No,
No, we understand. The filter we're going to try to address before, but, there may be
opportunities
some big
down the road. Yeah.
more opportunities within 5 years of being able to recoup some of that money that we're paying off the filter. I mean, not the filter, the slide.
The bond, yeah, and that's come up. I think we're just worried that the day that we're going to need significant funds may be coming sooner rather than that payoff date. So we're trying to prepare for that.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay, we'll close this. There'll be another public comment session later on, and we'll now move into our monthly Board of Health meeting.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Logs, 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing annual notice of regular meetings for 2018 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2017, and by filing said notice at the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Here. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
All right.
Whereas Chapter 231 Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7 provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting, and whereas desire the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be it resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, the Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the January 2nd meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Board of Health meeting minutes from January 2nd, 2018.
Second.
Perfect.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Rowe, we'd like to have you up here for your report, sir.
This month, we have two good public health programs coming up. The first one is the blood drive on February 22nd at the library, so we'll continue to publicize that. It's very important for people to donate blood. I don't think a lot of people really understand how important it is, but it was critical for so many people. It's a lifesaver. Then we've also, with our municipal alliance, we've scheduled a series of 3 meetings. And the first is February 21st. There's a flyer going around about it. And it was actually Mr. Carnes who organized it. And we're co-sponsoring with the South Orange Alliance and ADAPT, who's a county drug program. And it's for parents, the intended audience, and parents who were concerned about drugs and want to learn more. And so we're going to publicize that widely, and we hope any parent who's concerned about drugs would want to come. I think it'll be a friendly audience where we can exchange. There'll be good information given and then good discussion for questions. So I'm hoping that that hits a responsive chord with parents, and they are. Sometimes you don't want to think about this stuff too much, but this is a good place to come if you do have concerns. Just as a follow-up, we are enforcing the dumpster sign law. We've been out giving notices of violation. We're probably going to start issuing summonses either later this week or starting next week. Some of them we had to reissue notices because the dumpster is actually owned by a property manager rather than the individual restaurants. So just to let you know, we're not dragging our feet on that. We were pursuing it. You probably already seen some signs on different dumpsters. One of the things that fooled me was I was out looking for signs on the dumpsters, and they had the sign, there's, you know, their business name, but they had it facing the business. And I was on the other side from the driving side, and I didn't see the sign. And then, you know, went in to talk to them, and they said, oh, it's right there. And they put it on that side deliberately so that the employees going out would know it's their dumpster. So it's kind of a
And they put it
good
on
move
two
by
sides.
some businesses. Pardon?
Don't put it on two sides.
They didn't, no, but it would be nice.
I
But
don't remember what the letter said. Did it say just one?
yeah, we
just
didn't even
certain
consider
inches
that, yeah.
high? Yeah.
So,
Just has to have a sign.
but some of them are big and bold and you can't miss them. So just let you know, we're following that. Finally, if anyone's still on the fence about getting a flu shot, get a flu shot. And if they don't know where to get it, please call the health department. We'll tell them where they can get a flu shot.
Do you want to say the number that they can call?
It's town hall number 973-762-8120 and extension 4400 or 4300 for our nurse. And so that's it. The flu is particularly nasty this year, so it's time to get it. That's my report.
Any questions for Mr. Rowe? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we're going to discuss breast cancer's awareness campaign. I'd like to ask Committeewoman Adams to talk a little more about that.
Sure. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have had success. Candace Davenport has been proactive in trying to get more community awareness on breast cancer, and mostly the importance of screening and what information about where men and women should go, what their next steps are after a diagnosis. So she was meeting last week, and I don't know if, Mr. Rowe, you have any information from Davenport on the meeting she was supposed to have with Komen of North Jersey to get information and to provide a list of resources for underinsured and uninsured men and women to get screened.
The answer is yes, that is the plan, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up in my report.
Okay.
But yes, we'll be getting information and distributing it widely to encourage particularly women to be screened at the appropriate ages.
Ms. Davenport has been really great with ideas for how to make aware of the importance of early screening, early detection, and that's about all I have, but we'll have updates from the health department.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Rowe, maybe for next month you can spell out exactly what that plan will be in terms of rollout of this communication awareness, so we can kind of talk about it, and then we can take it from there and also contribute to that process.
Yes.
Great. Don't go anywhere. Thank you, Ms. Adams. The next topic of conversation is noise early morning truck deliveries in the village. I know Mayor DeLuca had a conversation a couple weeks back.
Yeah, let Mr.
Rowe can talk about it as well.
Well, the mayor and I and the district manager for Kings, and actually is the produce manager for the local Kings, who's kind of the senior employee at the business, met and discussed the noise. The solution that we came up with is somewhat of a compromise. They agreed to have no deliveries before 7 a.m. And also they would notify the garbage company not to come before 7 a.m. to remove the compactor. I think that was probably the noisiest piece of the puzzle. And the township agreed to allow them to continue parking from, I think, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Yes.
On that block in front of their business. So it's actually a good move for them, because they can unload and very quickly and much easier than if the spots weren't available. And the residents of the building, I think they were satisfied. Weren't totally satisfied, but they were satisfied enough.
Have some of them reached out to you since
Yes, the one gentleman who had come to the meeting, he thought it was a reasonable compromise. He's actually sent us a couple of emails indicating that it seems to be working so far, and he will notify us if it stops working. So I think it's a problem that's hopefully been solved, at least for now.
Are we going to be blocking off those spaces? Are they being blocked off, or are they just going to be permitted park there if they're?
Yeah, there's some wooden horses, and the King's employees will take care of putting them out and then returning them back to the sidewalk at 10 a.m. I think the police were doing it for a while, but now the King's employees will do it.
So the sign in the temporary loading zone was put up there because of the construction. And we had an intention of taking it down, but it does seem to work. So there's still signage that there's no parking from 7 to 10. And what's good also is, as you say, the King's people will be putting them up and taking them down, so it relieves the police from having to do that.
And the mayor.
Well, I'm not doing the block, I'm just doing the cones. But it's working. You know, we've had some wrinkles. We've got to work out a few things. The crosswalk has been blocked a couple times, so they have to pull up the truck. But they will not begin unloading, even if a truck pulls up at 5:30. The truck has to sit there off until 6 o'clock. They will not accept anything until 6. And then we're also encouraging all the deliveries there to start using the loading zone.
Right, for the other businesses.
And any deliveries to King's after 10 o'clock. Once that loading zone goes away, they can't park there on the street. Right. There's no double parking. They have to use Rickleton to do it. They have some small trucks that can fit into a parking space too. It's just that everybody wants to be right next to it so they can unload, but it's not going to happen. So we made it clear to them that they have to be a good neighbor.
Yes, and I think they want to be. And we also talked about maybe finding ways to promote King's business along with the Village Alliance. So looking forward to whatever we come up with that.
Thank you again, Mr. Rowe.
Okay, thank you.
I would now like to invite anyone in the public who would like to address the board. Seeing no one, I will now entertain.
Can I just say one thing? We did get a copy. I just wanted to make sure everyone did see the copy from the county about the grant, Municipal Alliance grant. It did go down from 27 to 24 and change.
But that's still more than we usually spend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on expect.
Yeah, we've already been spending about 80% of our allocation.
I'm still petitioning the county alliance to restore those funds. And so it's not till the end of the month when it's a done deal.
Okay.
And so
Well, hopefully I'll get a different letter.
Have they asked you how you allocated those funds? Have they asked you how you allocated those funds to justify?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
That's good.
So, but, you know, I think we have such good programs now. I would hate to have to forego any of them because of lack of funds. So we're going to continue to work on it and find a way to make it all happen.
Right.
And particularly, I love the police open gym program. And I love the mentoring program, which the police are involved with. I think it's a win-win for everybody involved. So we want to continue to promote those and support those programs.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.
Okay, again, seeing no one here to address the Board of Health, we will motion
I move we adjourn.
There you go.
Second.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Dappis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, we're back on the main agenda. Item number 12, it's an ordinance on final passage.
So Mayor, item 12, ordinance on final passage. Ordinance 2880-18 is an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Menzel Avenue at its intersection with Schaefer Road. This ordinance will designate Menzel Avenue as a stop street at its intersection with Schaefer Road.
I move the ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk to be directed be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
That's right. Before we move on it, we just have to state that this ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance about the stop sign on Menzel? Seeing no one, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Item 13.
Item 13, ordinance on final 2881-18 is an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Jacoby Street at its intersection with Schaefer Road. This ordinance will designate Jacoby Street as a stop street at its intersection with Schaefer Road.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, can we get a motion?
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Item 14.
Also on final, 2882-18 is an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Hughes Street at its intersection with Schaefer Road. This ordinance will designate Hughes Street as a stop street at its intersection with Schaefer Road.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, can we get a motion?
I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to the law.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Item 15.
Also on final, item 15, Mayor 2883-18, is an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Schaefer Road at its intersection with Newark Way. This ordinance will designate Schaefer Road as a stop street at its intersection with Newark Way.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the laws. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, will ask for a motion.
I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Item 16.
Also on final, 2884-18, an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Fernwood Road at its intersection with Woodside Road. This ordinance will designate Fernwood Road as a stop street at its intersection with Woodside Road.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, we will ask for a motion.
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. 17.
Item 17, also on final, 2885-18 is an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Brookwood Drive at its intersection with Woodside Road. This ordinance will designate Brookwood Road as a stop street at its intersection with Woodside Road.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, can we get a motion, Ms. Adams?
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as the passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Also on final, item 18, ordinance number 2886-18, an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Peachtree Road with its intersection with Woodside Road. This ordinance will designate Peachtree Road as a stop street at its intersection with Woodside Road.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, can we get a
I move
motion?
this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Yes.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Item 19, also on final, ordinance 2887-18, an ordinance to designate a stop street and direct the installation of a stop sign at Laurel Avenue with its intersection with Brookwood Drive. This ordinance will designate Laurel Avenue as a stop street at its intersection with Brookwood Drive.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law.
Anyone want to speak on
Anyone want to speak on this one? Seeing no one, will close the hearing. Could I get a motion?
Mayor, I move the ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
All right.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Adams?
Yeah.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Item 20.
Item 20, also on final, 2889-18, ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will remove prohibition of Sunday parking on a section of Burr Road.
This ordinance was published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, can we get a motion?
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to the law.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, the marathon stop sign ordinance. And now we're into an introduction of a new ordinance.
Item 21, Mayor, it's 2888-18, an ordinance to amend Chapter 59 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Seniors Advisory Committee. This ordinance will add the Maplewood Memorial Library Director or designee as an ex officio non-voting member of the Maplewood Seniors Advisory Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and the hearing to be held on February 20th, 2018.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. And we have another one on introduction.
Item 22, ordinance.
Hold on. Yes, sir.
We missed one. We're missing 2889-18. Burr Road.
Yeah, no, we did.
Oh, we didn't do Burr Road.
Yes, we did.
We did
Well,
both.
I remember
parking,
Burr Road.
Sunday parking?
Yeah.
Okay.
did that one.
All right.
Yeah, we did that.
Okay. Yes, item 20, we did it. Yep.
Now we're on 2890.
Oh, the numbers are on the secret.
Number 22.
The numbers are.
Mr. Desiderio, you remember what happened with the
Yeah, no,
publication?
but the numbers are out of sequence. Yeah, I do.
Not a problem, no.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Item 22.
22.
Ordinance number 2890-18. It's an ordinance establishing the position of police chaplain within the Maplewood Police Department. This ordinance will establish the position of police chaplains within the Maplewood Police Department.
Mr. Lindbergh?
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and the hearing to be held on February 20th, 2018.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams? Yes. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, item 23.
Item 23, 2891-18, also on introduction. An ordinance to require the registration of vacant residential properties within the Township of Maplewood. This ordinance will require any vacant residential properties within the Township of Maplewood to be registered with the Maplewood Building Department.
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on February 20th, 2018.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Lembrick? Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have 4 discussion items. The first is a solar ordinance draft. I had circulated a draft of an ordinance that is being promoted by Sustainable Jersey as part of it's creating a solar-friendly ordinance action in order to get gold certification. We now allow solar collectors in all of our residential and commercial zones, except for 2, the Special Light Industrial District and the Continuing Care Retirement Community Zone, which is Winchester Gardens. We don't really define much about solar collectors other than a little bit about if they're in the backyard. So this puts more meat into the definitions. It talks about the requirements and also makes some recommendations about the fees. Sustainable Jersey is suggesting that we utilize flat fees as opposed to our current existing fee structure that starts relatively small and works its way up based on the kilowatt or number of panels. Sustainable Jersey believes that, and I had that agreed to by our building official, that it essentially reviewing a solar application, whether it's 50 panels or 100 panels, it's the same review. It doesn't take any longer. It might take a little longer for the engineer, the electrical inspector to get out there, but not material. So we're proposing that we introduce this and adopt this ordinance. When I circulated it, there was one feedback about, are we only allowing solar collectors on the principal, for example, the house and not the garage? We are not. We do want to include the garage, so we need to change the language here to allow an accessory or principal building. And then also we have an issue with a flat roof, whether we can exceed the district height limit. And generally it's to allow the collectors to be higher than the roof. Sometimes the roof has a parapet or it has other equipment on the roof that could inhibit the sun. What we're suggesting there is that for a roof-mounted system, that there's a request to go above the height limit, that it go to the planning board for review, and the planning board has discretion to allow it to go up 10% above the height as per the land use code. So those would be the proposals, what you see here with what I just described.
Mayor, would this be going before planning board?
If we introduce this at our next meeting, it would go to the planning board for their review. So is there any feedback?
I'm for it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good.
100%.
Okay.
We have, for the ground mounted, sorry. Talk about lot coverage at all with regard to that?
We don't, but I would assume it would cover by lot. It would be covered by the lot coverage. We could add a reference to the lot coverage ordinance, because the lot coverage deals with any accessory structure, right? Yes. And I can work with Mr. Desiderio on fine tuning it, and we can introduce it at the next meeting. Yes. All right. Next up is charging South Orange seniors double what we charged Maplewood. No. Charging them the same. Ever since we started with Soma Two Towns, we've been doing a lot of shared programming, and what we have a request is that we charge the seniors who live in South Orange the same rate as a resident senior in Maplewood for programs sponsored by the REC program. And that would be for senior citizen aerobics, the club, Pilates, walking, yoga, Zumba. Now, we adopt the fees by resolution. The last time we adopted this resolution was in 2014. So I assume, Mr. Desiderio, we could just pass a resolution. How would you suggest we do this?
We really should do it by ordinance, I think.
What, giving them permission to be charged the same amount?
Well, if these fees that are in this resolution, which I have is a 15 resolution, 3715?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 2015, yes.
Okay. It just seems to me that it should be passed by ordinance so that they're incorporated into our code.
No, because these change every year. These fees could change every year. The way our code says is that it's the fees are set by resolution.
Okay. So what you want to do is you just want to pass a resolution, well, you just want to pass a resolution saying that South Orange residents are entitled to the same fees?
South Orange seniors.
South Orange seniors, okay. Right. All right, well, if you want to pass that now, I'll just memorialize it.
Yeah, that would be good. Is anybody in favor of doing that?
What do we do now? What do we charge now?
At non-resident. They have no discretion at the rec department. Well, that's what they're supposed to charge. Let's put it that way. And South Orange does charge the Maplewood residents the same as a South Orange resident.
Right. I'm for it then.
I am too.
Okay, so we can get a motion to allow South Orange seniors to be charged the Maplewood resident fee for the senior recreation programs other than the Maplewood pool.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next up, we have the pool fees for 2018.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as we heard the presentation from Ms. Coleman, the chair of the Maplewood Community Pool Advisory Committee earlier, the pool committee, in looking at the finances of the pool going back for the past several years, would like to do two things. One is address the gap currently between the operating expenses of the pool each year and the revenues that the pool brings in. And the second is to begin to establish a capital fund or at least some rainy day funds that exist should emergency repairs or other improvements be needed to the pool that the pool would not need to necessarily come to the town on its knees groveling for town money. As was pointed out before, and as all of us know, the pool is run as a utility and is supposed to be self-sustaining. Over the past couple of years, the pool committee has done, I think, a really good job, along with the recreation department, of working on their own and also with Mr. Manning and Mr. Uribe to get the expenses under control and to bring the expenses down. However, because membership has declined over the years, and well, over the last couple of years, it has sort of remained flat. So it's at least the decrease trend has stopped. And the gap between expenses and revenues is not as great as it was a few years ago. The gap is still there. So the proposal is a modest increase of 5 to 10% for individual, couple, and family memberships, with no increase to the senior membership. I can certainly distribute the chart, but just to quickly go through the full summer prices, putting aside the early bird, which is a 5% discount, and then also leaving aside the reduced priced August only memberships, to to give you an idea of the changes, an individual membership would go from $270 to $295. Seniors would stay the same at $190. Couple goes from $405 to $425 for the summer. A family of 3 to 7 members goes from $445 to $495. A family of 8 or more members goes from $530 to $585, and that's the same as the family plus caregiver, $530 to $585. And another change, in addition to the fee increase that's being proposed, is something that was already implemented as a sort of an ad hoc basis last summer, which was for the family plus caregiver membership, was to permit a family to designate multiple caregivers, so that if there's a change in the nanny or the au pair, or if a grandparent is taking care of the child for part of the summer, that they could be designated as the caregiver and join under the family membership, and that person would not need a guest pass if they were the caregiver for a child who was part of the family membership. Obviously, we're going to retain under this proposal the 5%, roughly 5% discount for the early bird, and also be retaining the less than half price membership for someone who joins just August only. The other component of this plan to not only close the gap but hopefully create a surplus would be, given the significant drop in membership over the last 10 years that we've seen, would be to open up a limited number capped at 325 memberships for non-Maplewood residents who would pay a premium of approximately 50% above the Maplewood resident price. And this is, like the others I should have mentioned, we're trying to work with comparables for surrounding towns, trying to keep up with what other towns are doing that have similar facilities and similar models. So the out-of-town price for individuals would be $445, for couples, $635, families of 3 to 7, $745, families of 8 or more members, or family plus caregiver, $875. And we feel that those prices, while obviously higher than the Maplewood resident prices, would be competitive, if not attractive, compared to similar facilities in the area that have the type of offerings that we do and allow non-residents to join. And as was mentioned here tonight by Ms. Coleman, and as has been reported to the Pool Advisory Committee and the Recreation and Human Services Subcommittee of the Township Committee, there is a number of issues with the pool maintenance that could be very serious issues, and for which there's currently, there would be no savings or no funds to pay for. The most immediate concern is the fact that our pool filter is nearing the end, if not past the end of its life expectancy. And that's something that would be a major repair, 6-figure repair. And if it were to go down during the season, even if we could quickly get a replacement installed at a cost, would cause the pool to go down for some time while those repairs were made. And there's also a number of other capital improvements and repairs that we'd like to make, several of which were mentioned by Ms. Coleman tonight. So that is sort of the overview. As Ms. Coleman mentioned, there hasn't been an increase in fees for at least the last 5 years. Our fees for residents are currently below, in some cases well below, what other towns that operate on a similar model. Obviously, South Orange is not part of that group because they have a very different model for their pool, but who have a similar model to ours and have comparable facilities, charge more. And combined with the fact that we are running a deficit, which we're not supposed to do for a utility, we felt this was necessary, and I agree with the Pool Advisory Committee's recommendations. I should mention that the Pool Advisory Committee now has many residents who volunteer. Several of them are MBAs, work in corporate finance, are very savvy, and have a lot of background in these issues. They've run the numbers, and this is what we need to do to keep the pool viable and open without running a deficit that the township has to step in and cover. And they've really done, working, like as I said, with Mr. Manning and Mr. Uribe, a really good job over the past couple of years to get expenses under control, but expenses are still running above revenues at our current membership levels and prices. So that is my report. I'd be happy to address any questions, but this would be, Mr. Desiderio, I believe if we're going to do this, everything is currently in an ordinance, so we would need to do this as an amendment to the ordinance, which we would put on for first reading on February 20th and passage, second reading passage on March 6th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Limbrick, I think, first and foremost, I thought Ms. Coleman's report was excellent. She really spelled out for me core revenue, secondary revenue, and incremental revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely on board with the secondary incremental revenue. I think the preseason parties made a lot of sense. Lessons, and of course, the incremental revenue stream, which would be out-of-towners. And then when you think about the core revenue, which is basically seasonal fees, breaking them down, I did a quick analysis while you were giving me the numbers. We're looking at anywhere from, from $8 to $12 incremental per person, depending on what type of plan you have, be it couple, family, or personal. So I see the logic here, and honestly, I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think I'm going to be on board with this. I also want to stress at the same point that we continue the program to make sure for those who may not be able to afford even the current price, we continue the program. We try to pay it forward to others in the community. But understanding being a utility and understanding the situation, and I was at the meeting with you where we talked about the filter, and that's an alarming issue that I'm very cognizant of now. I would be in favor of this.
Thank you. And to your point, Mr. McGehee, I should have mentioned, as Ms. Coleman did, that there is a proposed increase, a modest increase of $10 for the cost of group lessons. We found that our cost for swim lessons was well below what anyone else in the area was offering. Our increase will still leave us below what we think of as even the low end of the average for the area, but we wanted to avoid too much sticker shock to parents who are used to paying $25, going too much above that, so going to $35. And the parties, what we were finding was the weekend parties were viewed as a steal. Those were getting gobbled up as soon as they were available. So the increase in there, and the weekday parties were actually pretty rare, and we had the staff to do them. So we'd be actually decreasing the price slightly from $300 down to $250 for a weekday party, hoping to get more takers for the weekdays. And then the larger parties, charging $10 a person. For certain community groups, we were doing parties and actually losing money on those parties because we would need to bring in a full staff of guards and attendants, and it wasn't meeting our costs. So taking that cost up to $10 a person, I think is still a reasonable price for these large groups, less than the cost of a movie ticket or most other things that groups would do, while also allowing us to at least break even on those events.
I appreciate all that. I too am in favor of the increases. I think they're long overdue. I would like the Pool Advisory Committee to maybe brainstorm and figure, I understand they don't have any budget, but really some sort of campaign to increase membership. When I moved to Maplewood, and for many years after I moved here and before I moved here, there was a waiting list for the pool. So I'd like to see a more aggressive outreach in some way, or maybe the committee could brainstorm ways to get the word out about a facility that is a great resource and try to increase the membership. Bottom line, that's where it's going to end up needing to go.
Yeah, no, certainly increasing members is one of the goals of the committee. The hope is as some of the new residential buildings in the area of the pool come online, some of them already have come online since the last pool season, and obviously Avalon Bay, as people start moving in there, that's sort of a really natural market. So there's specific outreach efforts planned for those areas, social media campaigns, and there'll also this year be a renewed focus on trying to get people to donate to raise money for Pool Pals, which, as Mr. McGeehee mentioned, is our program to help provide assistance to residents who do not have the means to pay the membership fees for the pool to offset some of those costs.
Mr. Lumberg, thank you for your detailed report and for Ms. Coleman's report. That was great. If we want to have a pool, we have to increase the fees. The fees haven't been increased quite some time. The pool is also falling apart. We need to figure out maintenance issues, as everyone has stated. I'd be in favor of the increases. They seem modest, at least to most of us. But the thing that I would be concerned about is affordability and access to all. So going back to Pool Pals, which you just mentioned, I'd want to know that the advisory committee is doing everything that it can to expand on Pool Pals and have resources there available for those who can't afford the pool. Some kind of discount, so that we could not have an access issue.
Yes, and that's, like I said, that's going to be one of the focuses, not only of the pool committee, but a personal focus of mine this year is going to be getting the word out and trying to run a fundraising campaign for both Pool Pals and the Recreation Scholarship Program, which we created now going back 2 years ago, to make sure that these resources that our town is able to offer are actually open to everyone, regardless of where they can pay for it. And some of these programs, particularly a utility like the pool, we just, we're not able to waive the fees, but what we can do is help people to pay a lower fee that they can afford.
Terrific.
Through the use of the Pool Pals and scholarships.
I'd be happy to help you in that regard. So please reach out.
Just a couple of things. One is a few years ago, I think we said that town employees who live out of Maplewood would be able to join using a resident fee. Did we not? That's not going to change, right?
Yes, that's still true. We haven't had many takers on that, but we would still continue to offer Maplewood employees the opportunity to join the pool at any level by paying.
Okay. I think this might be something we can talk to the chief about at Public Safety, because I think this would be a great way to get some of our new police officers to join the pool. And integrate or get involved more with social life here. So maybe we can do marketing with the pool. I'll work with Ms. Mancuso to try to hook up with some of the new buildings, Avalon and the others, so that we can get in there and talk to their tenants. The other thing is, we have crafted a program of South Orange and Maplewood people in South Orange coming to the Maplewood pool, and people in Maplewood going to the South Orange pool. Is that going to be affected by this?
There will still be the opportunity for South Orange residents to pay the Maplewood rate.
Right. Okay.
And that's
that limited program that we have.
Right.
That's not going to change.
That limited program would not change. Okay. The South Orange residents who wish to pay the Maplewood rate. Now, obviously, there's also a program that allows Maplewood residents to join the South Orange pool, but also, I believe, pay the Maplewood rate.
Yes. And it's limited. It's capped, I think, at 36 families or something.
Right, but I actually don't think even those spots have been filled.
No, and this was really because some of the folks who live in Maplewood, their kids go to the South Orange school and their friends are from South Orange. So they want to go in the pool together.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. So that's how we did that. Right. So, and then the only other thing, for a while we had, I think, a feeling on the pool advisory committee that they didn't want more people at the pool, to be honest.
That has changed.
And that's changed. And we've had to work over the years. I mean, we had a fight for the town employee thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things about the non-resident members is we should work with our 2 special improvement districts to get their marketing out, because this might be an opportunity for folks who work on Saturday and Sunday to bring their family to go to the pool so they could go to their job or their store, their business, and then afterwards meet their family at the pool. So this might be an opportunity for some of the business people in town to join and have, more opportunity.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One other thing I should mention is to sort of close the circle on something that came up almost exactly a year ago. We created last year a weekend-only membership option,
right,
where there was a discount for people who joined weekend only, and there was concern on one end that it might end up cannibalizing a lot of the membership because people would take the weekend price. There was concern there were concerns on both sides, either that too many people would do it or not enough people would do it. It ended up that only a few people took advantage of it. So we've actually, the proposal is not to keep those rates. There were just so few people that did it last year in the pilot program that since there's already so many different membership categories, and early bird and regular and August only, to simplify it a little bit, to no longer offer that, since it was really a non-factor last year in terms of revenue one way or the other.
Makes sense. That's why it's a pilot.
Yep. Okay. All right. So it seems that there's support to put this on as an ordinance on introduction at the next meeting.
And Mr. Desiderio, I don't know if Ms. Mancuso has already sent you the draft, but what she's done is sort of marked up the last fee ordinance that we did. And she sent that to me for review, and I'll get back to her and she'll send it to you. So hopefully it should be relatively easy to turn around for the 20th.
Very good. Thank you. We'll get it done.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Mr. McGee, the special assessment for the Maplewood Village Alliance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this past Saturday at our budget hearings, the Maplewood Village Alliance presented their 2018 budget, and the conversation of pavers was brought up, and myself and Mr. Lindbrook, as well as Mr. Jaffis was there, and it was stated at the time that the cost of the pavers, which was approximately $1.2 million, would be entirely incurred by the town. And so when the question was asked at the time whether the assessment, which is the current assessment, had ever increased in the last 5 to 10 years, the answer was no. In addition, the second question I was asked was, has there ever been consideration of a special assessment to help subsidize some of the costs of this $1.2 million price tag, which impacts all of Maplewood, not just one particular area of Maplewood? And the answer was no. So I communicated to the individuals that were presenting that we would take this up as a bigger body to have a deeper conversation regarding the possibility of exactly doing just that. So I provided everyone with some information from our CFO, Mr. Uribe, which shows assessment and tax rates over the last 4 years. But really, before we get into the details, I wanted to kind of get the temperature of my colleagues regarding their thoughts in regards to this stated issue and what they want to consider in terms of a potential increase in assessment, a slight increase to help obviously subsidize the costs, or at least a special assessment. So I'd like to go around the docket here and hear everyone's opinion. Ms. Adams.
I'm surprised to hear that they said that a special assessment had never been discussed, because when I was on the board, I brought it up when the pavers were brought up. There was a couple-year process of Engineering and Public Works, working with the Village Alliance on choosing a paver, and it was in conjunction with the new development at Claris. So the upshot was that the developer at the Claris was required to use whatever paver was chosen, so that as we moved forward improving the much needed work done on the sidewalks in the village, that it would all be consistent. When I was a member of the Village Alliance Board, I brought up the idea of either a special assessment just for this project, which they did not agree to consider. There's also another way to go about it, which is separate and apart from the Village Alliance, is to impose a special assessment on the commercial property owners in a court, because in our ordinance, sidewalks are the responsibility of the property owners. That applies to all of us as residents as well. So although we have, and I think the general consensus, at least in engineering, was that, you know, we need to take care of the village, which I think as a township and as a government, we do. We spend a lot of money, and we spend a lot of time caring for what is considered by many to be the jewel of our town and the community gathering place. So I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm not in favor of helping with this project. I also offer different design ideas for the sidewalks to the Village Alliance to try to mitigate expense associated with the pavers that were chosen, and also to address certain issues with regard to a section of the sidewalks downtown. One certain block has underground vaults that make it difficult to put full-size pavers in, and then actually lessens the life of those pavers when they're placed in it, and compromises their stability and makes them pop up, as we've seen. But that was also not desired. So I think there's a couple things that we need to think about, and that is using the pavers that were chosen, because we can't go backwards. That was already decided. But maybe using them in such a way that we can reduce the expense and lengthen the life of those sidewalks. So it's something to look into, at least from maybe our engineer. I think he actually did some numbers on that a year and a half ago, or whenever we were talking about it. The other option too is Special Improvement District does have the ability to bond, and they have the ability, we have the ability to bond as a municipality. And so there is the opportunity to have the Village Alliance participate in sort of a bonding, to bond for some of the money to help pay for this project. And I don't think any of us is suggesting that they pay for the entire thing at all. So, but as part of, because it's a big number, special improvement districts that I've worked with and other special improvement districts around the country and in the state participate in public improvement projects that take place in the district. That is to say, not only with the design and their expertise and their input, but also with helping with financing. So that is one issue with the pavers. The other issue with regard, because the last 4 years, and I think it's even much longer than that, 10, 15, 20, I don't even know if the SID assessment rate has ever gone up. And in fact, in these numbers that you shared with us, 2017, the cents on the dollar has actually gone down from the previous 3 years.
Right.
I think it's wise for both the Springfield Avenue Partnership and the Village Alliance to look at a modest increase every year to the assessment. And as some SIDs have come into this kind of situation and then had to make a large increase on the assessment that much more difficult to take in the pockets for not only the business, but the property owners. So sensitive to all these issues, but I think an incremental increase each year will help not only with the work of the organizations to expand the work that they do, but also to compensate their staff a way that I think they haven't really done as well as they could. I think they get a lot of work from the staff people, the directors of these organizations for not a lot of money. And I think those are the kinds of things I'd like to see them start addressing with the increase. Because all of the work that both these organizations do and have done benefits those property owners. That's why it's an assessment and not a tax, because it's specific to benefiting those properties. And they've seen a lot of work paid for by others done on their behalf. And obviously I agree with the whole concept, but I think there's a need for them to start putting a little more toward the work that's done in there in a financial way.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Deputy Mayor McGehee, I agree strongly with everything Deputy Mayor, former Deputy Mayor, Committeewoman Adams said. She said basically everything I was going to say and more, and said it from the experience of someone who's worked in this area professionally for decades. So the only thing I would just echo is that I think that I would be in favor not of shifting the burden entirely, but of sharing the cost, of sharing the responsibility. This is a major investment that we're making with these pavers. These are very high-end pavers that were insisted upon by the Village Alliance and property owners and the business owners, and we're doing that. I think it's a worthwhile investment, but I don't think it's an investment that should be borne entirely in terms of the cost by the taxpayers. So I would like to see some sharing of the cost here. So I would be in favor of that, whether through a special assessment or a raised assessment, or however we accomplish that, or a bond as Ms. Adams suggested. But however we might be looking to accomplish that, I would be in theory very supportive of that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Limerick. Gaffis.
I agree. Thank you, Deputy Mayor McGehee. I agree with everything that was said, Mr. Lembrick and Ms. Adams. I don't have the extensive experience that Committeewoman Adams has. I have worked, however, in special improvement districts. We call them business improvement districts in New York City. They're synonymous. It's pretty much the same. And the idea behind it is to have the SID or the bid shoulder some of the burden with respect to improvements that are being invested within the district. And so I would also be in favor of some shared burden here. I would be very uncomfortable to have the township cover this entirely. And I think it's the fair thing to do. The Village Alliance chose the pavers. We'll use those pavers. And I think that would be the right way to go about it. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffis. Mayor.
So I disagree. A couple things. We told both the Village Alliance and the Springfield Avenue Partnership that we should, and we have that power, that we should up the assessment this year for their operation. Because I agree with Ms. Adams that they run, both of these run on a shoestring, and it's borne by cheap labor. Cheap woman labor. And I think that they could do more, and we ought to have a higher assessment. I mean, we're talking about every 1 cent assessment in the village raises $5,500. So it's not like we're going to be attracting a lot of dollars, but I think increasing the Alliance assessment just to cover operations is a worthwhile action for us to take, and I would do that with the partnership too. And I was pretty clear in alerting both of them last year that we would be looking at it this year. And we have the power to set those assessments, and we do that sometime in April, I believe, March or April, April? Yeah, so that's when we do that. So I would hope that we would entertain an increase in both of the assessments for their operation. On the assessment for the pavers, I feel differently about. I don't think that we should charge. We're talking about $1 million. I think it's an amount way beyond what an assessment of $54 million in the village, in 54 million, isn't it?
Oh, is that what you mean?
Assessment. Yeah. The assessment, total assessment in the village. I was looking at the thank goodness for the requirement to do public notices in the paper. I was looking at last week's news record, and they have the whatever it's called in South Orange, the alliance there. Their assessments bring in about $92,000. The village contribution is $150,000. So in South Orange, their assessment is not bringing in that much, and they're putting a pretty significant amount of money into the operation. We're putting in $13,500 into the operation. So I do think that when it comes to capital improvements, that's the responsibility of the town. On Springfield Avenue, these are some dated numbers, but we were looking at over $10 million. And the streetscape work was about $4 million, $3.5 million, and if you put in engineering and construction, it's closer to $4 million.
Were there grants for any of that?
Not for that.
Okay.
I mean, there were grants, but they were, we just got grants, and we got grants for the roadway. We were doing the roadway and curbing, but of that $9 million, about $4 million was grants and also state aid. We used state aid for that work. So we've taken the position on Springfield Avenue that it was our responsibility to put new curbs up there. And I thought last year when we approved the capital budget, we were taking that responsibility also for the village. We got a report from our retail consultants that said the village looked tired, that the bricks were dirty and couldn't be cleaned. We tried. We sent in people to clean them. We couldn't clean them. Our engineer suggested we take the bricks up, we send it out and put it in a washing machine and bring them back. That just became either too costly or wasn't feasible to do. So we decided to move ahead and do new bricks, new pavers throughout the whole village. So I do think it's an investment. It's an investment in our downtown, just like we invested in Springfield Avenue. I think the assessments, if they should increase, and I do agree with an increase, should go to operation. And I don't think we should increase anything more from the town as far as what we provide for operation. But on the sidewalks, I would say that the town should pay for that.
So in terms of the pavers that were picked by the MDA, those, I understand that they had several options, and they chose the Cadillac, the top line. And so then there's incremental costs.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We could debate Cadillac. There were clay bricks and there were concrete bricks, I believe. I don't know which ones we got, but we got the ones that were at the higher end than the lower end, because
And there were also options with, and I'm sorry, there were options with how to lay them out too. Oh,
right, but I think our engineer was saying that he wanted them laid out in a certain way that would protect them going forward. We're talking about a 50-year, was it 50 years, or is that something else I'm thinking about?
It was, yeah, 50.
It's 50, we're talking about a 50-year investment here. So I don't think that we should hold it against the Village Alliance. We were trying to get the developer to go with the standard of bricks we wanted, and he was trying to come in with a very cheap brick, of course, and we picked this other brick. And we went through a lot of days sitting in that room there looking at bricks and getting different costs. So yeah, could we have picked maybe an incrementally cheaper brick of 10 cents or 25 cents a brick, maybe? But I think the other thing is we were going for, I think the brick that we picked has a longer life, and I think the system of installation was concrete, it's not sand, correct?
No, it's the engineer is putting a concrete
base.
Requiring a concrete base that wasn't done the last time.
Correct.
Bricks will still be laid in sand
Yeah,
on top of
but the concrete floor there is what's going to maintain those bricks from, and not let them pop up, because you're not going to have the ground seeping up and pushing those bricks up. So yes, it's a little bit of a more of an investment, but it's an investment that our experts tell us is the better way, the better expenditure. In the long term, we're getting more for our dollars.
Right, but I think that the Maywood Village Alliance should invest in themselves as well. So I do frankly or respectfully disagree with you, Mayor, and I think that we should consider not only increasing the assessment to compensate for the ladies that work, but also we should maybe have Ms. Ruby run analysis and look at the incremental assessment price point we can do to also have them compensate and subsidize some of the pavers.
I was just going to, my biggest frustration has been on this, the lack of willingness to consider anything but totally pavers. And there's even the pattern in which they'll be laid, there's more waste in the cuts. There are, downtowns that have all sorts of different sidewalk pavers, and it's not what makes the downtown. I totally agree, the sidewalks need to be done, and so does the street, and we're working on all those things in committee, but I was disappointed and still am that concrete or a combination of concrete and pavers was basically shot down and wouldn't be considered. It was very frustrating because Rodeo Drive has concrete sidewalks. They're, I think, a little too much of a marriage to get between the bricks. There's too much reliance on it. And I think there's ways to mitigate the total expense. I'm not at all, this would be actually a percentage-wise, not a huge amount. We're still going to be spending, we might even still be spending $1 million. If it's $1.2 million to do these sidewalks, and we're just asking for a contribution, whether they bond it and it's just a line item, a bond payment and line item, they could go through and get through the municipality and get the municipality's rate, bond it and borrow whatever it is. If it's $100,000 over 20 years or 10 years or whatever, it's all doable, but the numbers haven't even been looked at or run, and I at least would like the numbers to be looked at. So if it becomes a regular payment of $10,000 a year, that's something I don't think is too much of an ask.
I agree too. I mean, if you're asking all of our town to invest, their disposable income in your businesses, then you should also invest in yourselves. And regardless of percentages, what we're talking about, you should show an investment in yourself and the community. So not only should you obviously consider labor situation, but also more importantly, an investment in the community by showing some type of contribution. It also shows us that you're going to stay around and put more capital expense into your other things to make sure your businesses are viable. So I agree. I think we should have Mr. Rebay run the numbers and look at some, my finance hat, look at some scenarios inclusive of the three that were articulated today, and see what we come up with so we can figure out what that increase in the assessment will be in April.
So what are we talking about? I mean, as Adams put out there, a couple $100,000. I mean, if we're talking about, let's just use the number $1.2 million. What are we saying? Is it $200,000? Is it $600,000?
I wouldn't put a number out there right now. I would let Mr. Rebay do some analysis and run some projections.
We don't have the numbers, right?
Right.
Well, we do have the numbers.
Well, we have a.
Well, so just if the $200,000.
I don't know what, I don't think
I'm just putting that out there. If it was $200,000 and it was, every 1 cent if it was $5,000. And that would be 40 years of payback.
I would feel more comfortable letting our CFO run the numbers first.
Well, no, I understand that.
Then
Don't
I'll
we have to
concur.
give him some guidance?
I would
could.
like to give him.
Let's give him some guidance.
Okay, here's some guidance.
Is he here?
I would like to.
Mr. Manning will give it to him.
I would like a consideration of, because while the engineer came up with an extremely efficient and long-term way to lay the pavers with the concrete side and force the contractor at Claris lay them the way he designed. And I hope that lasts longer. But I think in order to mitigate the cost, or maybe it costs the Village Alliance nothing, if they consider a design of the sidewalk that would do a combination of pavers and concrete, particularly in the block between, what is it, Inwood and Highland.
Yeah, but that, I don't think that can't drive the rest of the village, right?
Why not? Why can't the design be something that would cost everybody less money, but would still incorporate the pavers that were chosen? It could even be half and half. The sidewalks could be a 2-foot border of the bricks, and then where the vaults are, it's concrete. So that, I mean, there are designs all over the place for different.
Right.
But so maybe if nothing else, if we get at least some ideas for an alternative design that would cost less, which I had asked for a couple different times, but was never considered. Then maybe there is no cost to the Village Alliance. Maybe, we just save a little money on the overall project and it's still a beautiful improvement.
Well, let's do this. Let's have Ms. Uribe go back and look at if the Maplewood Village Alliance paid 100, 200, up to 50%, to do all those revenue models, right? 0 to 50%, come back with numbers, send them to the TC. We can put this on discussion for the next meeting. End of the day, I mean, Mr. Limerick just presented some information, and we were very comfortable with increasing the rates for our residents to swim in our pool. So I feel equally as comfortable increasing our rates for our Maplewood Village Alliance.
That's not a question. I agree with you. I guess we're not going to let the Village Alliance decide what kind of sidewalk they want, right? We're going to decide that.
They already decided?
We decided.
No.
They told us that they decided.
No.
No.
Well.
No. We were.
Those meetings, we had we tried to get we didn't decide. We were told this is what they wanted and we accepted their guidance.
And we decided to go ahead with it.
We decided to go ahead with the sidewalk project. We hadn't, and we funded $350,000.
I think we've got to be clear. Just so, because look, there's one thing I know about politics. I know how to count. I understand I'm in the minority here, but I just want to be clear about what we're doing. The Maplewood Village Alliance gave us a recommendation. We accepted that because we gave the instructions to the Claris as to what kind of brick to put in, based on this assumption in our decision that we were going to continue that pattern going forward. So the brick that was put in was based on our instructions to the Claris developer, because again, he wanted to put in a lower cost brick, and we told him this was the brick to put in. And that was our decision, and that was going to be what we were going to continue doing the rest of the village.
So here's my question to you. At that time, did we agree to pay 100% of the cost?
Yes.
Okay.
Because last year, we presented this, and we said this was going to be a 3-year plan of $350,000 per year. And we put that into the capital budget last year. And that's why it was put in Mr. Kittner's budget for this year. Luckily, we haven't spent anything, so we haven't done anything. So we can go back and change that decision, okay? But it's us making that decision. It's not the Village Alliance. If we go back and tell them that this is too expensive for us, that we want to engage with them in a conversation about some other form of brick pavers or design, then that's our decision. It's not their decision, it's our decision.
I mean, if I was going to go shopping and.
That is what we're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. I mean,
that's what we're trying to say. That's what I've been trying to say.
I'll put it in simple terms. When I was a younger kid, my mom said, you want to go get the Michael Jordan shoes, I'll give you $100, but they're $130. You got to find the $30 yourself. That's all it is to it. Simple math.
Yeah, except that, okay, all right. We haven't decided on we don't even know what it costs, because we're operating on a framework that what Ms. Adams is saying needs to be rethought.
Right.
So before we talk about money, we ought to talk about what we're going to put there. Now, if you're saying that the money determines what we're going to put there, then I guess that could be one thing. If you only want to spend a certain amount of money, then that's what's going to be put there.
Well, then I would suggest that we talk to our engineer about looking at alternatives to not to eliminate the brick, because we do want to carry that brick all the way through. Mayor, you were there many times when I tried to broach the subject of why don't we concrete this section. Manning was there.
Yeah, no, I know, and
I over and over again.
I know we did.
And it wasn't brought as an option to the full township committee to do a different design. Right. In my recollection.
You're right. And it came out of the Engineering and Public Works Committee.
Right. But that was with the paver. So now we're at a point where we have new members of the Township Committee, and we're talking about budget, and we're looking back at the numbers, and we're reconsidering. So whether or not they felt dictated a little bit, to be honest. I didn't feel like I had any wiggle room. And so you and I disagreed at Engineering and Public Works,
right.
And as the only two members at the time of that committee, it didn't get brought back. It got brought back as 1.2 million for all pavers all through.
Right.
So if this committee isn't comfortable spending 1.2 million, and we may or may not be comfortable at the end of the day with having the Village Alliance shoulder some of that cost, then maybe the answer is to try to mitigate the cost a little bit, bring down the total cost by redesigning. So can we ask our engineer to look at alternatives, or at least to price out if we do, a border or whatever of these bricks.
And I'm agreeing with you, and I guess what I'm saying is, we ought to do that exercise first before we figure out anything with the money, because there's no sense in just having the framework of 1.2. It sounds like 1.2 is not going to fly. We ought to go back and say, we don't want to do this, we want to do something differently. What are the options that are different? And then we come back with those options, and then we make a decision how to go forward. And then once we know how much it costs, we can prorate it between us and the Village Alliance.
Well, I agree with that. It was brought to us that this was a done deal on Saturday. So what you're missing, because you weren't here this in the morning, was this was a done deal. Okay. And so I'm glad it's not a done deal.
It was a decision, I think, that we decided last year to do. We're saying that we're going to revisit it, and I think that's fair. We have the power to do that.
And that's what we'll do. Thank you.
So we should put it on for engineering.
Well, it was a robust discussion.
As it was.
It's just unfortunate because the two of us who were engaged in this were not here Saturday, and I don't know what was said. I don't know what was said by the Village Alliance, but
you can go to the videotape.
Yeah, I didn't have time or interest to do that. So,
but one of you is now saying that she was uncomfortable with this and never felt like it was a decision that anyone from the committee made. It was more dictated.
I felt like.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I'm saying that's what one member is saying, right? Am I correct? Am I
saying I felt like I felt like there was no choice being offered.
But we recommended it from the Engineering and Public Works Committee to the Township Committee, to go with the bricks.
And time was of the essence because we had to choose a
Correct.
paver for
Correct.
So there was a little bit of that.
Right. There was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pressure. And there was also the pressure of, we did the bricks on Springfield Avenue. Are we going to treat the village differently?
But
That was an issue
that's
too.
an argument I never.
But that was an argument that was up. It may not be to you, but it may be legitimate to another person.
Of course.
Right, but also to the extent that commitments were made to the Village Alliance through this process, that's something that obviously I wasn't in the room for, but that's something that I think we should consider also, because I would not want to set a precedent with the Village Alliance or any of our improvement districts or groups of business people or residents in the community that that representations then made by the Township Committee about what we're going to do and how we're going to share costs or how things are going to be funded are subject to change based on new members coming on board and such. I think we just need to be careful about that.
Well, and I also think we need to be cognizant of the difference between Springfield Avenue 20 years ago and downtown Maplewood Village at any time, really. I mean, it's had its own ups and downs, and right now it looks very tattered, but it's also, you know, pretty vibrant downtown for a tattered small downtown. Whereas Springfield Avenue was a whole nother 2-mile stretch of virtually ignored for years business district that was failing and was a 2-lane highway, basically getting to and from Newark. And that's what the state wanted it to be. So that was to have tried to get the property owners there to pay for sidewalks and improvements over there when it was, what, I don't know what the percentage of vacant, but it was just, you know, and the mayor's led a very strong and important redevelopment of Springfield Avenue over the last decade or more, and to the benefit of those property owners. If we were having this discussion about Springfield Avenue now, as opposed to when we were proposing all this stuff, when we were forming the partnership, and when we were begging the town to do something, then it might be a different conversation as to the funding.
Right. But, you know, I'm just keeping in mind that, you know, you mentioned, you know, we are, you know, downtown Maplewood, the village, you know, is showing some signs of wear and tear, and you know, it was that village that got us voted, you know, best downtown just a few years ago. And I think I just want to reiterate that while I want the Village Alliance to invest there, I also believe the town should be investing there. And if I didn't make it clear before, I think the town should bear. You know, I think we should do this. Find the best plan.
I think we're all saying that.
Yeah, you know, but in terms of thinking about, you know, you had said, you know, let's focus on 0 all the way up to 50. I think I would be much more comfortable with the Village Alliance contributing something more in the 10% range than something in the 50% range.
Correct.
In terms of how I'd be thinking about sharing the cost.
I mean, from a percentage perspective, I'm fine with that. I mean, the mayor asked for numbers, and I said, you know, like in my world of finance, we go through all type of projection scenarios.
Right.
So we could look at 5%, 3%, 10%. I just do arbitrary numbers because numbers are asked for. But the bottom line is that I think the Maple Village Alliance should contribute something, not nothing. That's it.
So I actually would be fine if it was 10% based on what we have now. I think we're going to have a pretty significant pushback if we move away from all the pavers and putting the pavers down. If we left here now saying we're going to move forward on that, but the Village Alliance is going to have to pay 10% of it, I think we could probably get an agreement and go forward. But, you know, to go back and open up the conversation about how many pavers, is it going to be a border, is it going to be sidewalk, is it going to be stamped concrete? We've had all those conversations before. We made the best recommendation, and that was to move forward with pavers, the high-end pavers in concrete with sand that are going to last a very long time. And if you disagree with the installation, then we should have the conversation you're suggesting. If you disagree with the allocation, then we can just say, well, what percentage are we comfortable with, and then let's just charge it.
I mean, I know almost nothing except beyond what I've heard tonight and what I heard on Saturday about the former.
That makes 2 of us.
You know, I wasn't a part of the meetings. It wasn't, you know, so I'm not going to claim, and you know, nor am I coming to this governing body with any experience in the matters of pavers and concrete and any of that. So, you know, I think really my focus is, you know, we want it to look good, and you know, if we can give the Village Alliance and you know, what they're looking for, and we can do something that's good and that's going to last, and we can find a way that they can share the responsibility for the cost. And I'm talking about, again, not a split, but a share of something like 10%, give or take. I'd be comfortable with that. But I don't have the knowledge of the background. I'm going off basically what I've learned from Saturday until today.
Right, which is what we learned Saturday. It was a price point, and we were paying 100%. So we've come a long way in about 4 days. Mr. Manning, can you have Mr. Uribe run the numbers at a 10% investment by the Maywood Village Alliance? And
Yes.
we can start there.
For the current pavers.
Yes. Yes, for the current pavers, yeah.
And perhaps Mr. Daffis would see if there was any wiggle room on the design from the Village Alliance as to what they might recommend.
I think we have to talk to Mr. Kittner too, because I think his recommendation was to put it in concrete with the sand.
I'm not talking about how it's constructed, I'm talking about, if there's any wiggle room on the Alliance part, in regard to whether it's side streets have just a border and the whole avenue has full brick, or if they're open to any options at all with the design. Yes, ultimately, it'll still be our decision, but from their perspective, maybe even any contribution financially from there.
Well, I think the interesting thing will be is that once the numbers are run, they see that the price point, there may be a consideration exactly what you're saying, where previously before there was no consideration because they had zero investment in this process.
And I think we also have to go back to both of them and talk about the raising of the operating assessment, because it's very competitive, and you have to do marketing and you have to do events, and you need money to do that. And it's more than just the individuals. We focused on the individuals, but you just need money to do it. It's more costly. Social media is more costly to place ads and to do promotion and to do events. So we gave them warning last year that we wanted to increase these assessments. We were waiting for the reval to take place. It has taken place, and I think we can go back and negotiate some increases in these operating assessments too.
Right.
Okay? Do we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 3218 through 4118 and approval of the open and closed session minutes from January 16, 2018 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lindberg?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. There's no one here, so we'll move past the public comment. Administrative reports, Mr. Manning?
Yes, I have two items. The open position for police chief, we have two internal candidates. You've decided to ask internally, so we have two candidates. I've provided you with their backup information, their resume, their letter of interest, and references.
Mr. Manning, can you give the names of the two candidates?
That would be Acting Chief Jimmy Duvall, and Lieutenant Kish.
Thank you.
The second thing is that the feminine hygiene dispensers are installed. The products are free. The only places they're not currently are in the shelter houses, which don't open up till the spring, and we'll take care of that when it's warmer. That's it, unless you're...
Anything for Mr. Manning? Okay, Mr. Desiderio.
Thank you.
I would just, in terms of pending litigations, they're just moving forward, and there's really nothing new to report on either of the litigations.
Okay. Anything for Mr. Desiderio?
Nope.
Ms. Fritzen?
Okay, one item, I guess, Mayor, you received tonight in your mail a copy of the lease agreement concerning 5 Highland Place, which I only received this afternoon. And to sign lease agreement for a restaurant to go into 5 Highland Place. And my question would be, we would have some resolutions that we will need to have to entertain at the next Township Committee meeting, whether or not you would like to reinstate Mr. Keen's license, ABC license. And if you decide tonight that you're not interested in doing that, we won't proceed with the resolutions that we need to do for the state to reactivate the license and basically reverse your decision approximately 18 months ago to not approve the.
I believe we should reinstate the license.
I was the one who pushed to not reinstate it because I was trying to force the owner to find someone. I helped him find someone. I think this is a real home run for the village, and I would be in favor of renewing the license.
So we will put on for.
So let's see what else everyone else has to say.
I agree.
Agreed. Yep. So we'll put on for a hearing.
Well, there's actually going to be 3 resolutions. I have a memo from the state. Ms. Fritson will draft those resolutions and she'll have them on for the next meeting.
And then you'll follow up at the end of the meeting with a hearing?
Hearing for what?
A hearing, you'll do the resolutions during the regular portion of the meeting, and then will you have a hearing with the licensee about reinstating?
Well, no, I think the sequence has to be that the reinstatement has to come first. So what I can do, we can either do it at the end of the meeting if that's what you choose, or you can take some time in the middle of the meeting to have the applicant.
No, do it at the end.
Okay, so we'll list them as separate resolutions after discussion items?
Yeah, we're going to convene as the ABC or not?
So do it again as the, well, you do have to convene as the ABC. The resolution reinstating is not the ABC.
Right.
But the other 2 are, so yes.
Yeah,
So
so-
we'll do it at the end.
So you
Do
can
they
put
physically
the,
have to be here?
Pardon me?
Do they physically have to be here?
I would think you would, I think you would want them
Yes.
here to answer.
Okay, no, I was just, I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
we'll give them notice that they have to be
yeah,
here.
let's tell them to be here 9 o'clock or so.
Okay.
And we'll do it as the ABC at the end.
All right.
And then if we have to do the other resolution, we can do it as a separate resolution, and then we'll do the other ones as the ABC.
Okay.
Is that it?
I hope Mr. Desiderio will work with me on this.
We'll see. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. Okay. Elected officials. Mr. McGehee.
I knew I was going first tonight. I know your methods, babe. All right, a couple of things. One, this Saturday at 5:30, I will be hosting what we'll call a discussion for Black History Month. It's on the book The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. It will be at the Village Coffee on Maplewood Avenue this Saturday at 5:30. And my other point of interest is that for Maplewoodians to go out and get your tickets for the middle school musical, Cinderella, this year.
If there are any
left, Andrew, there we go. If there are any tickets left, they're going really fast. The middle school puts on a wonderful event, just like the high school, and it'd be great for especially all the kids in the lower schools to come out and see a wonderful show for a relatively reasonable price. That is Friday, February 23rd, as well as Saturday and Sunday, the 24th and the 25th of this month. And that is my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mayor. A couple things from last month's Engineering Public Works. The NV5 presentation for, that's the firm that is working with the state for the grant that the mayor got for pedestrian safety study, focusing mostly on Prospect Street, Valley Street, and Burnett Ave, is they're going to have a public meeting. Did we decide, is it at the Woodlands?
It's going to be, no, it's going to be at the community center in D-Hart.
D-Hart Community Center on
7:30.
February 22nd at 7:30. Mr. Lembrick asked for the committee to talk about parking distance from driveways. They're 5-foot distance, and the current ordinance lists certain number of streets that has that restriction. We discussed it at the last committee meeting. Mostly we decided, because if we passed it on every street, we would have to have signage and curbs and striping or painting on every street in town. So to the extent that it's a problem, We are going to notify the public through the leaflet and on the website of how to register a complaint or notify the town if somebody is parking too close to their driveway, they're having trouble getting out, and handle it on an individual basis is how we came out of committee with that. We'll see how that goes.
We were going to announce it, right? Through the leaflet and all that?
Yeah, that's what I just said, on the website and the leaflet. I've been working with Village President Sheena Collum and trustees Karen Hilton and Deborah Davis Ford, along with the Business Improvement District Directors, Julie Doran, Deb I always go by, I always want to say Collum because that's Yohannan, and Bob Zuckerman. Sorry, been a long day. On March, Women's History Month in March, we want to, especially in this time of women sort of being in the spotlight as needing equal rights, equal pay, and equal protection, if you will, for a lot of issues. But so we are putting together a few events during the month of March, and we're titling it Soma Celebrates Women. We're going to kick it off with a photo. March 3rd, we'll be inviting all the women of Maplewood and South Orange, location to be determined, but we're looking at Floods Hill, and we're looking at the amphitheater in Memorial Park, and we're calling on photographers from both towns to come take pictures. One of those pictures will be used for the website that we're developing and the Facebook page that's being developed. So we want and we're asking women to wear white, women and girls to come out for that photo and wear white for women. So that'll be sort of the kickoff. We're looking at doing a seminar about women running for office and how to go about that process to encourage women to run for office. We're we're going to be cross-promoting any events that any organizations are doing in town with regard to Women's History Month. That includes the Duran Hedden House on March 11th. They're doing Maisie Brews a Business, which is focuses on the first women to start businesses ever. And that'll be March 11th at Duran Hedden. We're talking about movie night at Sopak Loft. It'll be Saturday, March 24th from 4 to 7. These will all be on a website we're developing and the Facebook page. That movie, we were bouncing around ideas of empowerment or women's empowerment movies and settled on Hidden Figures. So kudos to Sheena Collum for getting a good deal on the rights to that movie so we could show it. And then toward the end of March, we wanted to have a night of celebration. And that's still, we tried for the Woodland for March 31st, but it's booked all day and all evening. So we're looking at a possible local business for that, and that would be probably the last weekend in March. So it's still being developed. We're all working on it, and and actually this came about when Sheena and I were celebrating Mr. Lembrick's birthday during March Madness last year. And we were like, why don't we do anything for Women's History Month? So that's sort of where the impetus was, and we decided that for 2018 we would start focusing on Women's History Month a little more. So thank you for your birthday party.
So many great moments in women's history have taken place at my parties.
Oh, okay. Oh man.
Oh, God. All right, on that note, Mr. Daffis.
No report, Mayor.
Mr. Lembrick, other than your parties.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to congratulate our Recreation Department on having a great basketball game with a number of teachers and a principal from our local schools. I think there were at least a half a dozen Maplewood Police Department officers and also a representative from the Maplewood Fire Department. They played a game with some members of the Harlem Wizards. A number of us were there. It was very exciting. I think it ended in a somewhat controversial tie, but it was a great game, and it was really fun to see some of the teachers and our police officers and firefighters out there on the court. So some of those guys can dribble and shoot, and I think publicly stating that Mr. Daffis, Mr. McGeehee, and I have all committed to playing next year in this game, and we'll see if we can get the mayor and Ms. Adams to get out there as well.
Well, the mayor's a basketball champ, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the answer is yes. I don't want to be braggadocious, but yes.
So a great job by Missy and Ronnie and the whole crew at the Recreation Department. Very successful night. Hopefully it'll be even bigger and better next year. Second thing, on behalf of the Public Safety Committee, as Mr. Manning announced earlier, we have two candidates for Chief of the Maplewood Police Department. Both were raised here in Maplewood, spent their childhood here, so they have deep Maplewood roots. And we'll be making a more formal announcement soon, but we're going to have an opportunity for members of the public to come out and be able to meet both candidates, have a chance to hear from them about their vision for the police department, ask questions, and have a chance to see them and provide some feedback. The third thing in my report is the mayor has generously offered to allow me to take the reins on the mayor's wellness campaign. I think because that is not only good in terms of continuing Maplewood Loves Wellness, but I personally am in need of a wellness campaign. So as we head into the spring, I want to work with some of our local groups that are very active, including some of our local businesses that have a health and fitness focus in the village, on Springfield Avenue, on Valley Street. We have them all throughout town, and I'd like them to get involved in helping the community and myself get more active. As part of that, I would also like to enlist the community's help, as I mentioned earlier, in raising funds and giving generously to helping our kids stay active through our Pool Pals program and our recreation scholarships. Since last year, my birthday party gave rise to this year's Women's History celebration. I'd like to use my birthday this year in some way to help raise awareness and hopefully raise funds for Pool Pals and rec scholarships. That's a cause that is really important to me, and I think could really use assistance to help people in the community, particularly our children, to make sure they can be as active and participate in our programs in our pool. The last thing I'd like to bring up is more serious, and that is the issue of domestic violence, which we often hear about, but don't often associate with our community. One of the sadder things every month when I review the reports that I receive as a member of the Public Safety Committee, and when I talk to the chief and the captains about crime in Maplewood, is the number of domestic violence incidents that we see in our own community here in Maplewood. And just this morning, I'm not going to ask for a moment of silence. I'm going to ask for many people to have many moments of unsilence for Tiffany Wilson. Tiffany Wilson is a mother, was a mother who lived in Newark, but her two of her children were in daycare, probably still are in daycare here in Maplewood. Ms. Wilson was killed today. She was shot and killed in Newark by the father of her children. The father of her children had previously been arrested in both October and December of last year in connection with domestic violence incidents. The episode in December was here in Maplewood. The Maplewood Police Department did an outstanding job back in December of identifying him and helping other law enforcement outside of Maplewood to track down that man. These previous domestic violence incidents, including the one in Maplewood, involved a weapon, involved a handgun. It also involved the abduction of a child. Yet, despite the efforts of the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, their request that he be held pending trial was denied. And this morning, that individual shot and killed Ms. Wilson in her home. And you know, this is a tragic story, and I wish that it were a less common story. And I would like to echo the comments that were made by our colleague in Newark, Mayor Baraka, who issued a statement on this. And Mayor Baraka's own sister was killed a number of years ago in a domestic violence incident. So this is an issue that's close to his heart as well. I'd like to just read a few sentences from his statement this morning. What happened this morning is a sobering example of why the flaws in bail reform must be fixed. We can't go on losing lives like this. In the wake of this murder, I am calling for all parties involved in criminal justice, legislators, police, prosecutors, and judges to come together and collaborate to review criminal justice reform. Together, we need to look at the downgrading of charges by prosecutors, especially in cases of domestic violence, and to fix the serious flaws in bail reform. I'd just like to echo those comments and say that we need to protect our community's wives, our mothers, our children, and those in our neighboring towns by taking issues of domestic violence seriously, because this morning's events and the children who are cared for here in Maplewood that don't have their mother tonight are the result when we as a society and our court system fail to take domestic violence seriously. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There are 3 items. One, I have office hours Tuesday night, the 13th, from 7 to 8 p.m. here at Town Hall. 2, please check out our Black History Month web page. It's maplewoodbhm.com. We have, someone counted 27 events in 28 days. So we really want to thank all of the organizations. We've been able to put it together, everyone focus on it. We even have some more coming in. So, and I went to the 1978 exhibit, and it's really remarkable. You ought to get up there. And third, want to congratulate the Cassidy. It was listed by New Jersey Monthly as one of the 25 best new restaurants in the state. So who would have thought? So here we are with another winning restaurant in town. And with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. We'll see you on the 20th of February.